Howdy. Let's watch some weather as the beginning of this video. And I want you to keep a focus on the area here off the coast of northern Spain and Portugal. I've been mentioning this area some time ago already, and we are watching the 7th day of this month, almost 2 weeks ago. And now we are just watching the 24-hour loop, and now we'll steadily continue to the next day as smooth as possible. Of course, I could have maybe tried to cut this all together in one smooth video, but obviously I didn't. So we just have to hold on and give it the time to load. But you can see already, maybe we zoom in a little bit. That's the region what we are watching. Here we have the Azores, La Palma. And it doesn't seem really to load. How is it possible? Yeah, let's start from the beginning. Yeah, that's amazing. As soon as I try to make a video, it crashes. Yeah, that's amazing. I don't care too much. Yeah, let's go to the 8th. And try again. Losing the internet connection in a situation like this might be a coincidence. But I will talk about coincidences later on. Yeah, that's rather annoying, but now we get it. Yeah, okay. That's the region we are watching here. And I have been watching this region since a while, like I told you already before, because there is stuff beneath the seas. And if you believe in what you were told in school about how weather functions, that the wind is carrying the clouds and they crash into mountains, that's why there is rain at the mountains. Yeah, I don't think that's true. It might be true partially, but for example, here, this area, there are no mountains in the sea, in the Atlantic, and yet we have a lot of rain and clouds nonetheless. And if you apply the right-hand rule to this, you will figure out that there is energy going upwards, because we can see the spinning direction of the magnetic field. In other words, Earth seems to discharge in that particular region. So this was the 9th, and here is approximately the pivot point of that weather system that is spinning very obviously in this direction. The low pressure system. The energy is going upwards. And that's the 10th, and this is continuing. Yeah, it wobbles around a little bit, but the approximate area is somewhere here. Let's just watch still the next day, the 11th. Let's see how it continues. And I think yesterday, maybe it resumed. It hasn't been very easily visible for a while. Now we can see it somehow dissipates. And now let's go just to the next 12 hours. So these are the last 12 hours until the moment right now. Yeah. Obviously, the area, the pivot point, the center of this rotational feature is approximately at the same spot as it has been some 2 weeks ago already. And this is something I have been watching for an extended period of time, let's say like this. And it is affecting the weather rather intensively in the area. And it seems to be rather strong because it somehow blocks all the weather, the weather that comes from the other side of the Atlantic. This seems to block all the other weather systems. They don't really reach straight to Europe. They get deflected up north. Now let's take a quick look at Iceland. Is there anything rotational going on over Iceland at the moment? Anything of interest? Yeah, maybe not. But we have something here over Turkey. Yeah, there's something brewing in Turkey. We have a rotational feature here over Turkey. Cyprus. Eastern Mediterranean. There is some rotation going on. This might be a heads up because I am pretty convinced that with watching weather maps, you in a way get a glimpse in what is going on beneath our feet. Not only by the things that are located in certain places, but also the energy that goes through the atmosphere and the ground. Because this is just one example. Clouds are the forerunners of earthquakes. The atmospheric clouds of meteorological nature have no clear line boundaries. It is hence understandable why linearly extensive banks of clouds found on the satellite images made in the beginning of the space area provoked interest of the scientific community in this phenomenon. A comparative analysis of the photos and maps of the Earth's crust faults has shown that the cloud anomalies were related with the geological structure, namely with the faults of the Earth's crust. Though the nature of the unusual phenomena is not clear yet, the information accumulated allows of practical applications, namely indicating seismically active regions In the first half of the 20th century, French geologist A. Schlumberger, doing field studies in the Alps, and outstanding Russian geologists I.V. and D. Mushketovi, working in Central Asia, discovered cloud banks not be blown away by the airstream, which were formed over the Earth's crust faults. So there was no convincing explanation of the physical principles underlying this phenomenon. It later, in the 1970s, found wide use in space geology. On the images of the Earth taken from the outer space, the cloud boundaries were sufficiently clear to carry out a mapping of faults in the shelf zones of the continents. The famous geologist P.V. Florensky used the images of cloud banks to find petroleum regions in the mid-Volga region and on the peninsula of Mangishklak in the Caspian Sea. Here are some examples, and like I said before, there are many, many other similar kinds of articles. Before the quake, from the time when the wide scientific community got access to meteorological satellite images, for example, on the Russian Federal Space Agency site, up to now, enough information has been accumulated to establish a correlation between a forthcoming earthquake and a certain cloud condition. Thus, it was found that a swarm of LCA emerges a few hours or sometimes 1 or 2 days before an earthquake. It can happen that in the same image, both banks and canyons appear over different faults or over different parts of the same fault. Evidently, geodynamic activity can lead both to cloud generation and cloud degradation, depending on the condition of the atmosphere. Like I said, you can apply the right-hand rule to the northern atmosphere or hemisphere. Right-hand rule, if you take your right hand and put out the thumb, that's the direction of the energy. And if you look down at your hand whilst the thumb is pointing to your nose, and you watch at your fingers, you can see the direction of the magnetic spinning vortex. So in this case, we can observe the energy is going upwards. Earth is discharging. And like I just showed you at the beginning, this is a recurrent phenomena in recent times. At the same exact location, and something might go on beneath Turkey as well, or Syria, or whatever we have here. Yeah, it's Syria. Somewhere here, because there is some rather intriguing cloud pattern going on there. But now let's just talk about this region. Here we have the border of northern Portugal, Spain. So we are watching out here in the sea. And that's maybe the easiest way in order for you to quickly show that, yeah, there is something. In Galicia escarpment. The Galicia Bank. 652 meters beneath the surface is the highest point. Unfortunately, there isn't any depth marked here around that, but we need probably to assume that's a rather big mountain here. And here we have the border of northern Portugal, so we are watching this region. There are several seamounts here. But let's talk about this one here. because deep sea benthic habitats modeling and mapping in a northeastern Atlantic seamount, Galicia Bank. That's some years old, 8 years or something. And I won't make a whole read-through. Abstract, this study presents the results of seafloor habitat identification and mapping of a northeastern Atlantic deep sea mount. An assemble first, predict later approach has been followed to identify and map the benthic habitants of the Galicia Bank. Biotic patterns inferred from the survey data have been used to drive the definition of benthic assemblages using multivariate tools. 8 assemblages, 4 hard substrates and 4 sedimentary ones have been described from a matrix of structural species. Distribution of these assemblages was correlated with environmental factors, multibeam and backscatter data using binomial GEMs, whatever that means. But anyway, we won't be catched up in these little things. Introduction, we will still go a little bit further down because I want to show you something of which I disagree. Yeah. Material and methods, study area. And Galicia Bank, GB, is an isolated, non-volcanic seamount. All right. They are saying it's not volcanic. I strongly disagree. Because I'm pretty sure that corals are volcanic features.
Guys,
Yeah. I made this video some time ago, 12 days ago. Wow, there's even 1 like, check it out. I don't care how many likes or if any, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, it's fine. If you disagree, it's fine too. And if you disagree and want to attack me in any way or something, then provide some evidence of me being wrong. If you don't make an effort, provide evidence of me being wrong, just mocking me, you probably better spend your time with something else. So, because here in this video I am talking about, well, it's basically mountain water, the same thing, about special water, so to say, coming out of the ground. And it doesn't matter if the ground is submerged in some sea, Atlantic, oceans, or whatever, or whether it's on land. Because I have been talking about these travertines. This is one of the travertines, which is basically very carbon, no, it's not carbon, calcium-rich water that emerges to the surface. And when it's on land, like on a mountain or something like that, the water, there's like CO2 gas released, and the calcium starts to collect on the surfaces, which is in many places very fertile because mosses start to grow and stuff like this. And at the moment there is something going on in Campi Flegrei. And people notice that there is like very much CO2 emissions. Yeah, it's the same thing. The special water releases a lot of CO2. And if that thing, like these terratines, or tufa ditches as they're also called, I don't know if it's here somewhere, terratines. Here I talk about this other volcano, where we have these, and we have those octocorals. Yeah, they're made of calcium, you know? And there might be even some CO2 gas coming out there, not only methane, as they usually just point out. And back to the Galicia seamount, which is according to them a non-volcanic seamount. But nonetheless, they made investigations here. Here's like some maps. And the thing is, when reading this, they are pointing out that, yeah, there's like those ocean streams. What is it? Currents that are obviously, or they think that's the main contributor to whatever water they have that is then driving some species. But in the same paper, I don't know where it is, there's like several times it is mentioned that there are like certain corals growing there, and there's like certain places where they find, in a way, much more life than in other places. That makes me think that these might be the places where we have water coming out of the ground underneath the sea. And in other words, this is also something where I disagree strongly from many, or maybe all volcanologists, that water needs probably to be assumed the most eruptive material here on Earth, because it's the watery planet. Yeah. So if we are on a watery planet, we probably logically need to assume that the most abundant eruptive material coming out of Earth is water. Yes. So it crashed again. No, I pushed the wrong button. So now here, where we had this cloud feature, I talked about, yeah, it doesn't really work, but it doesn't matter, you know, where we are. Yeah, that's interesting. It doesn't really work on a computer for now. But anyway, what's going on? Here, Spain, Portugal. I have been watching this and I thought, since a while I have to make a video because I have been somehow expecting some activity here. Now let's go over to the volcano application. And lo and behold, yesterday we had a 4.0. Galicia. Atlántico, Galicia. 4.0, 32 kilometers in depth. Yeah. That's the region where we have the seamount, where we have this weather occurrence, so to say, at the moment. Yeah, there has been some interesting earthquake activity yesterday. 4.0, 40 kilometers in depth. 4.0, 26 kilometer in depth. And also here, this was today, 4.0. And I wouldn't be surprised if we would see something going on here in near future. You can take this as an earthquake warning. Yeah, check out, there's already something going on. 34 minutes ago. Yeah, sorry for laughing. 12 minutes ago. 30 minutes ago. 4 hours ago. Dude. Yeah, I was talking about this region just a few minutes ago. And I knew about the quake at the Galicia seamount. And I was about to make a video before the quake happened there because I've been watching this for probably more than 2 weeks. The activity off coast of Spain and Portugal. And now we have something here. And basically in the meanwhile, I made this video and talked about this. Some earthquake struck here. There might be, it depends. We have to keep an eye on this. There might be something more coming. There has been a big quake some time ago there. But it doesn't seem to me at the moment that we would need to expect the Iceland volcano going off in very near future, but this can change, of course. Let's just keep an eye on Iceland as well. But at the moment, I don't see any atmospherical anomalies here that would indicate that there would be something going on Iceland. So now let's move from planet Earth, like on its own interactions with itself, which is not correctly said because everything is linked together. But I want to show you still something very interesting. Where is it? No, no. Now let's start here. We are at Space with a Life. And here we have the WSA-N little spiral where we can observe ejections from the sun. And I want to point out something very important. Now let's make this full screen if it works. As the name is saying, it's a spiral. So you can see these spiral-like features because the sun is spinning. There are basically no straight lines in nature, or too straight. So we have these spirals. These are curved features. That is very important. Now I want to show you the solar system scope. That should be open somewhere. Oh yeah, it's here. Yeah, all the windows crashed. That's amazing. For some reason. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if someone tries to interfere in my work. Let's say from a distance. I will tell you and show you later on what I mean by this, because after this one video where I mentioned a certain authority, some people freaked out, and yeah, it was interesting. So this is the moment we have right now. Here is Earth, here is Venus, Mercury. And if we go a little bit further, there is not a perfect alignment. Maybe there is. But you get the idea. Earth, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun. So I thought I want to know when we had the last time. This basically, that's to me, in a way, maybe the most important thing. The alignment between Earth, Venus, and the Sun. Okay. So I went back in time, and it was, I think, let's zoom out a little bit and watch it from above. I had this all prepared before I started the video. Now we go back in time, and we can see Venus, Earth, and we want to see when they were basically aligned or somewhat aligned for the last time in a similar manner as they are basically now. 23, 1st of August. So let's say 13th of August is basically the perfect alignment between Earth, Venus, and the Sun. But we also have to remember, like this is Earth, that's the Sun, so these are spiral features. In other words, if there is a straight alignment, it might not matter too much other than, yeah, I will talk about this too later, but we might have to go a little bit further in time in order to have Venus a little bit ahead of us. I don't know how much ahead it has to be in order for it to make the IMF connection, the interplanetary magnetic field line connection, which is roughly here where we can see the spiral. So I think that's a satellite. It is connected with this similar curvature feature. It's not straightly connected. It makes a bend as well as if there's a coronal hole stream. As you can see, like this is maybe a coronal hole, and that's the coronal hole stream. So the coronal hole seen from Earth is already at the western limb on the right side of the Sun. And the stream itself didn't reach Earth yet because, as I said, it's a spiral. It has this kind of a delay. All right. So now, Earth probably needs to be a little bit in front of us in order for some interplanetary magnetic field line making the connection from the Sun to Venus and then to Earth. And I thought, since we have this same thing going on at the moment, so this is now some 1.5 years ago or something, 13th August, where we have a straight line. And if we go to the actual time, we have the same thing. We have even Mercury going here. So I want to show you quickly still a small part about the theories of Immanuel Velikovsky at the Nobel Planetarium, September 1972. Worlds in collision. Let's hope if this works.
This is one of the main reasons that they give.
What are a couple examples of some of the predictions that have come true?
A prediction that actually Velikovsky prefers the word advanced claim was about the temperature of Venus. It was not considered that Venus was as hot as Velikovsky claimed. But by 1962, when the probes went by Venus, it turns out that Venus was extremely hot and much hotter than anyone except Velikovsky had anticipated.
All right. This is just one example of how much more correct Velikovsky was many, many years ago, before anyone else. Keeping this in mind, I just thought that has to be anything going on in, let's say, around August in 2023, when there was something similar going on between Earth, Venus, and the Sun. So I used ChatGPT. Yeah, we had some fun together. Yeah, okay. This is my response, something to what it wrote. What? Earlier you said, yes, Venus' Magnetotail can extend far enough to reach Earth under specific conditions. Where is that information derived from? You have to know that. I know that already. I'm just too lazy to search for it. So then we went on. It was replying, and I replied, so you were either lying or made stuff up, right? Or did you realize that you are not supposed to provide this kind of information to me? This kind of information. Fair question. I wasn't intentionally lying or making things up. I made a mistake in my initial response by stating that Venus's Magnetotail can reach Earth without properly verifying it. That was an assumption based on partial knowledge, rather than a claim backed by specific sources. When you pushed for actual papers, I realized I hadn't properly validated that statement, so I corrected myself. Yeah, oh man, you're so overrated, or average people are just too dumb biased in order for this to work. Actually, it might be the perfect recipe for your success, which is not a good thing. But anyway, keep looking for information about the Venus-Earth connection and provide something good. Anyway, it didn't. So I asked then the AI, were there any significant earthquakes or geomagnetic activities around August 2023? when we had last time Earth-Venus-Sun conjunction. In August 2023, several significant geophysical events occurred, including notable earthquakes and geomagnetic storms. In August 29th, 2023, a magnitude 7.1 struck the Java Sea. August 28th, a magnitude 7 occurred at a depth of 15 kilometers. August 5th, a strong G3 geomagnetic storm was accompanied by a R3 strong radio blackout. So like I said, August 24th, Venus was ahead of Earth. Earth, Venus. It was ahead already. Okay? The spiral feature. (7.1) and a 7-pointer. Strong geomagnetic storm. We are also in the equinox time, which is also very interesting. Average dimension and magnetic structure of the distant Venus's magnetotail. Institute of Geophysics and Planetary Physics, University of California, Los Angeles. We report the first major statistical investigation of the far wake of an unmagnetized object embedded in the solar wind. The investigation is based on Pioneer Venus Orbiter Magnetometer data from 70 crossings of the Venus wake at altitudes between 5 and 11 Venus radii during reasonably steady IMF conditions. So there wasn't too much solar activity at the time they made this. And I will put a link below to the paper. You'll probably have to use this site in order to get access to, because it's behind institutional walls, paywalls, and whatever things. So they're just telling here in this paper that the magnetosphere is very strongly expanding in quiet solar conditions. Then I could talk for hours and hours and hours. But maybe we just go to the next. Max Planck Gesellschaft. The tail of Venus. When the solar wind nearly breaks off, our neighbor's ionosphere expands into space. In rare events, the sheet of electrons and ions enveloping Venus in a height of 150 to 300 kilometers can expand into space like a tail. This exceptional deformation occurs on the planet's night side when the solar wind, the flow of charged particles from the sun, nearly comes to a stop. Scientists under the lead of the Max Planck Institute for Solar Research, System Research, MPS, were now for the first time able to study such an event in detail. Their analysis is based on data obtained by instruments on board ESA spacecraft Venus Express. The results may help to understand whether particles in our solar system can travel from one planet to another. For example, from Venus to Earth, right? The curved thing, we have Venus somewhere in front. If Venus, let me make this bigger. I should have taken the model where we can see the IMF lines, but we can see the spiral feature nonetheless. This is Earth, and Venus is now somewhere here in front of us. So in other words, if Venus goes somewhere here, it makes the magnetic connection to the Sun, and Venus' magnetotail makes then the connection to Earth. So we are going through the tail of Venus' magnetosphere, ionosphere, at some point in not too many days in the future. And there might be a possibility that particles travel from one planet to another, for example, from Venus to Earth. So, it is also still unclear whether the ionosphere of Venus can in principle expand far enough to reach Earth. Yeah. It might be because I'm pretty sure I have seen once a paper and even some pictures where you can actually see how the ionosphere, plasmasphere, or whatever sphere from Venus, the tail of Venus, reaches Earth. And if we would have some big coronal hole coming up, for example, where we have very high speed stream, yeah, I'm pretty sure it could stretch the tail of Venus and it could reach Earth. And this in turns could induce currents into Earth's crust. It could produce geomagnetic storms. It could produce very intense auroras. It could trigger earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and also bad weather, as I have shown in the beginning. Like, weather is also steered by outside energies, stuff coming from the sun, and it also is steered to some degree from below. So if there's some very bad weather coming up in the next, let's say, 2 weeks or something, let's have a look at the actual time. We are here. Now let's go on a little bit. Maybe 5th of April. I don't know how to draw this exact spiral. Or I don't know how much Venus needs to be ahead of us in order for the spiral going through both planets at the same time, and we would be in the tail of Venus. Maybe they could all line up together. First it's Mercury, Venus, and then Earth. So there could be some kind of a chain reaction. Ooh. Yeah, it seems to me that April might be a very interesting time. You could probably draw a spiral feature here that goes through all 3 planets. I think there's still something I wanted to show. Yeah. I think it's this one, once it loads. Reader environment. Yeah, long modification. Geophysical research letters. Advancing Earth Space Science. When is this made? 2021. A revised understanding of the structure of the Venusian magnetotail from a high altitude intercepted with a tail ray by Parker Solar Probe. Maybe we zoom in a little bit. One of the major discoveries of NASA's 1979 to 1991 Pioneer Venus orbiter is that the night-side ionosphere becomes filamentary at high altitude, forming comet-like tails. Pioneer Venus orbiter could not establish how much farther into the wake of Venus tail rays extend. Yeah, they don't know how far it reaches, nor understand how they form. Only electricity forms filaments. But since they are not really aware of electricity doing anything in space, they don't understand how they form. But anyway, here we present plasma. Yeah, plasma. You need electricity in order to get plasma. Anyway, here we present plasma and fields data from the fourth flyby of Venus by NASA's Parker Solar Probe, consistent with an intercept with an ionospheric tail ray. The observations ambiguously demonstrate that Venetian ionotail rays can extend to at least 7,800 kilometers in altitude. Using the new Parker observations, we are able to identify a tail ray encounter within the Venus Express dataset. We thus present a unified picture of the structure of the magnetotail of Venus based on combined Venus Express, Pioneer, Venus Orbiter, and Parker observations, and recent Holt hybrid modeling. Plain language summary. Like a comet, the planet Venus has a tail made out of plasma. Let me show you something. The Great Comet Venus.
This is Electric Universe Eyes, and today I'm going to narrate The Great Comet Venus by David Talbot, 1997, section titled Velikovsky's Legacy. What does the astronomer's dilemma mean for the historian seeking to account for ancient mythical images of Venus? At the present time, the unveiling of Venus means nothing to the historian because neither the historian nor the astronomer acknowledges any connection between the mythical history of Venus and the planet's actual history. But it was this presumed chasm between myth and science that Velikovsky challenged in Worlds in Collision when he claimed...
All right, it wasn't the perfect video. I wanted to show you something else where we actually could see something about ancient tales and Venus.
This is Electric Universe Eyes.
But anyway, I hope you get the idea. Yeah. The NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, Institute for Astrophysics and Computational Science, the Catholic University of America, Laboratory for Atmospheric Space Physics, Southwest Research Institute, Space Science Laboratory, California, Berkeley, Bay Area Research Corporation, Orinda. Like a comet, the planet Venus has a tail made of plasma. So in other words, Venus is still like a comet, like back in the days. Let me show you still one YouTube stuff, which is, no, we get some ads. No. I want to show you still this one place.
This is Electric Universe Eyes. And
because I want to also show you Yeah, Venus, sulfur, and flickering aurora. It's not that. Finnish copper. Because I have been talking about Venus. Finnish copper might have its origin on Venus or from the interaction with it. Yeah. And I had the intention to make a video about this. So now there are some 39 videos. And I could make many more. And some of them are basically backed up with experiments I made. If you want to know more about this, sulfur on comets, sulfur in general, there's a lot of sulfur on Venus. Sulfur effect on ripple formation and penetration. This is something, that's a video you really should watch, because it's very interesting what sulfur can do. If you haven't known about that. If you don't know, check out this, sulfur effect on ripple formation and penetration. Yeah. Wherever you find copper, you get the sulfur, and vice versa. So, as we made it that far here, and like I mentioned earlier in the video, in this one video I made some time ago, where I have been talking about this, yes, about this one ad commercial I saw many times that I mentioned. It turned out, it was some, yeah, how to put it, an interesting organization that told me during its advertisement many times that I should join their team. Yeah, there were like few people in the comment section making fun out of me and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't really mind because, yeah, you are responsible for your own reactions. And if the best thing you can do is making fun of someone, yeah, it probably tells more about you than about me. Because I made a video or two where I explain many things, and I really don't have any need to try to get some attention or whatsoever. No. This channel is about providing information, sharing thoughts that might be insights. And like I said already earlier, you can try to prove me wrong. And if you are able to prove me wrong at some points and stuff like that, tell me, because I don't really want to waste my time with crap. I am investigating many things all the time, watching the weather, watching the quakes, and watching many things. Me not doing as much videos as I did some time ago doesn't mean I would have stopped working. I am still investigating all the time. And let me show you one advertisement, or at least a part of an advertisement that has been provided to me in the, like, probably for a half a year or something. At some point it was almost the only advertisement I got. Like, it came almost every time commercial started, it was always the same. So I have been seeing and getting this advertisement many times. And unfortunately, I didn't manage to get any screenshot or something from the other advertisement I mentioned in some previous video, because after the advertisement was over, the video started, and once I watched the whole thing, they didn't show it me again. So they just want to make sure I watch the whole thing. Maybe. Who knows? So now let me show you something that might be, I don't know, upsetting or whatever. You can get upset as much as you like, it's not my problem. But I just want to show you something that maybe sparks a thought or two. And I'm not on any side. I am totally against any kind of violence, whatever. We are all earthlings. We are all here on this small dot, all together. So it would be a very, very, very wise thing to get along. You know, we are all in this together. So we might start, it would be a wise thing to, you know, teach each other in a very profound way. So let me show you something I I had to or have been seeing for a while. I won't say anything. I just know that there are certain words and stuff you are not allowed to say on YouTube. Maybe it's just for monetized channels, I don't know. But let me show you. As you can see, skip, this has been going on for some time already. Now this is one thing I have been seeing for many times.
Or even saturation attacks. Operates day and night. David Sling is a revolutionary hit-to-kill missile system, effective against all threats.
So now you can think for yourself. I'm just some random dude that has a small, not monetized channel or whatsoever. And I get commercials like this. What? Dude, am I supposed to buy one of these? What? Yeah, it only includes satellites and airplanes and all these kinds of things, you know? So now you can think again about this other advertisement I have been talking some time ago. You know, I don't need and I don't want to make anything up. It's not my, it's no. Making stuff up is a total waste of time. And I really don't waste my time. You know, we are all here, every one of us, each one of us, here on this little dot. Somewhere in the big somewhere. We might really need to get along with each other and live in peace. Otherwise, it won't be too positive. Yeah. Here we are. Each one of us. Each one teach one. Thanks. Bye.